Okay.
Okay, Media ATAR, you're 12, how's it going? Alright, so what we're going to be doing, I am going to start doing kind of like some stimulus commentary pieces, just on the stimulus material for the semester 1 exam. Essentially what I'm going to do is watch the piece, you'll see it obviously playing off to the side, and I'm just going to kind of like just talk about the kind of stuff that I would normally talk about in a class, which, you know, is nothing unusual. For me, you know, I'll always talk over material as we're watching it. So yeah, this will be just like being in class. Okay, cool. So the first one we're going to look at is Black Mirror Bandersnatch. If you're not familiar with Black Mirror, it's a Netflix anthology series, all right? Anthology, just in case you're not familiar with that term, is often when you're talking about standalone stories that are held together often by like common themes. In this case, it is the theme of dystopian futures. All the Black Mirror series often deal with future tech and how it can be misappropriated or how it's used in to either make people's lives better but worse in the same way, or how it just completely corrupts people. So yeah, Black Mirror Bandersnatch was like the first in the series where it actually became a choose your own adventure setup. And yeah, like, you know, it's a bit hard to obviously explain the whole concept of the story. You obviously get to choose options as you go along and everything like that. And yeah, like what we're going to do, I'm going to hit play now, just start watching it, and obviously just talk about some of the things that I'm seeing as we actually do it. So the clip itself is about 9.5 minutes long. So yeah, look, let's just get into it. Okay, so that's obviously the Black Mirror logo, as we can see there, leading into the main title, Bandersnatch. Okay, so establishing here at the beginning, we've got some written text, obviously establishing the date and the time. This is also reinforced by the diegetic sound of the radio playing. You know, playing obviously very clear 80s music. You know, we're at the very beginning of this, so essentially at the moment we're just being introduced to the character and what we can only assume is their day-to-day routine. Yep, so obviously if you're not familiar with this guy, I forget his name off the top of my head right now, but he was recently the main character in the series, the movie Dunkirk with Christopher Nolan. This is his dad. And once again, I could talk about the larger whole story, but keep in mind with stimulus material, we're normally really only supposed to refer to the content in that's presented to us. So we really should only be referring to the 9.5 minutes of footage that we've been given. Yet again, so getting back to the actual material, all right, he is reading a book, obviously entitled Bandersnatch. You know, this obviously, and this is his opportunity to basically explain to the audience what a Bandersnatch is, what the concept of Bandersnatch is, the idea of choose your own adventure, because let's face it, this is actually going to play a big role in the actual film itself, all right, or the film, TV show, anthology, however you want to refer to it. Also, while we're looking at this, like I need to, and while you're looking at it, you need to be thinking to yourself about like, what are the potential questions you could be asked about something like this? All right. Number one, this is set in the 80s, so we could assume that there's a question in relation to setting and how that impacts stuff. But let's just quickly go to this part here. We're obviously looking at the first choose your own adventure option, choosing between Sugar Puffs and Frosties, right? And obviously here, this is the interactive element. And yet again, tying to what kind of questions we might get, I wouldn't be surprised if we've got a question about, say, media trends. All right? And when we look at this, yeah, media trends obviously play a big role in any context that we might be talking about. And with this case, the interactive element, it's something that's relatively brand new, but obviously stems from a earlier, approach. As we can see in this show, it's talking about the books and how choose your own adventure books used to be a big thing. Obviously, video games have choose your own elements to them. We can talk about Telltale games and stuff like that. And as we can see, we're having another option here where we're actually picking between two musical choices. Funnily enough, as I've discovered, the musical choices that you make, and same with the Frosties, choosing between the Frosties and Sugar Pups, actually plays just a subtle factor where based on what you choose, you can actually see the commercials that might play in the background or the billboards that might appear are influenced by these choices as well. So it's not just a narrative element, sometimes it's just stuff that plays in the background. And as I said, I've found that out from other students who have watched this several times and played around with different options. But yeah, once again, it's getting back to the whole media trend thing. One of the key things that we could be talking about here and exploring here is the fact that what they're doing is they're taking one media, which is video games, and another media, which is film, and trying to combine the two to discuss and obviously explore how do you put it? Like how you can take basically the traditional film convention of not being a participant and just sitting down and watching, and now actually being a participant, much like in a video game, having the choice to impact the narrative, which is something we don't commonly do when we go and watch any other movie or TV show. All right. The other trend that we might talk about is a streaming service, because keep in mind this is a Netflix-based product. Right? This is not released in the cinema, this was not released on normal free-to-air TV, it's a streaming service. And streaming services obviously play a really big role in our society today, nowadays, as to how we consume media. And this, in many ways, is, or I would argue, is one of the next steps in how you use streaming beyond just a simple sit down and watch something passively. And there's a key word you might want to talk about. We're not watching this passively, all right? We're actually watching this in a way that requires our interaction, right? It requires us to be non-passive individuals. We need to actually get involved in the story, all right? We need to pay attention as well. Don't know if I've referred to this before, but Christopher Nolan says the big problem with a lot of media nowadays is it's subject to the pizza delivery system, right? And this is where like TV shows and movies can kind of like run in a very mundane fashion, and you can walk away for 5 minutes because you go answer the door to collect a pizza, you pay the man, come back, and you haven't missed anything essential. Right? Christopher Nolan's films are obviously structured in a way where he deliberately goes and plays with the narrative so that you can't just walk away for a minute and come back and discover something. You can't just come back and just jump straight in. You will have missed key important elements. What this is doing, and once again, this is tying into that idea of media trends, is that this is the trend of forcing you to pay attention, right? Keeping your eye on the screen. Right? Because you might miss a really important thing. You might miss a request to choose a path between left and right, or right and wrong and all that kind of stuff, because you're an active participant and no longer a passive participant. Right? Now, yeah, so the key things, going back to what potential questions we might find in these, we might have questions about how setting impacts narrative. Obviously the 80s setting impacts the narrative here because this is pre-internet. And let's face it, pre-internet, pre-mobile phones and all that kind of stuff. And yet again, if you try and set a drama nowadays, one of the big problems you have in delivering something that's suspenseful or has some real challenges in it nowadays in a modern setting is that we have mobiles, we have the internet, we have all these things that can solve a lot of the problems that we may come up against nowadays. If we're stuck if a character's stuck and doesn't know how to get somewhere, they can use an Uber and all that kind of stuff. So technology's really helped us nowadays. So setting something in the 80s like this is done really actually allows us to how do we put it? Like it just allows that extra model of challenge for the characters and the narrative, right? Because the narrative automatically changes because the character in a modern sense. So it changes because it's set in the past because the character can't rely on a lot of the tools that we take for granted nowadays. So that has a massive impact on the narrative, right? This character, yeah, as I said, having to work in an environment as opposed to working remotely from home. Haha, guess what we're doing right now, right? But yeah, look, at the end of the day, when looking at this, that's another factor. Setting it in the 80s, adds, I guess, an element to the narrative where there are additional challenges for the character that we can't relate to nowadays, right? We've done a time jump, so yet again, here's a written code saying that 5 months later, the character actually plays in there. Fun little fact, I have done Bandersnatch before. Choosing to accept causes you to actually go back. So what happens in this moment here is that after he's failed and he says, I'm going to go back, you actually go back to him waking up, playing out through the day again, and then you have to choose between either accept or refuse again. I've done it where I accepted accept twice, and it told me wrong path, as the character said, and then it made me go back yet again, so I had to go back and choose refuse. So I had to play through it all over again, click refuse, and actually end up down a new path. So it is interesting way of storytelling. We have a lot of control of how the character moves and choices that they might make, but obviously there are additional things there where we might not have control. So it's obviously worth considering those aspects. If you were answering a question about that, is like, how much control do we really have as an audience, especially when we're actually being given the opportunity to choose certain paths for our characters. Anyway, guys, look, that's the end of this one. This is the end of my commentary. I hope you've actually enjoyed listening to this. Hopefully I gave you some interesting stuff and you were like, God, he just waffles on a bit. But anyway, guys, good luck with everything, and any questions about this stimulus material, please consult the infographic, and please just send me a direct message if you're unsure. All right, take care, guys, and all the best. Rock on, Mr. Gooch.